Choices from Struggle to Strength. And today I'm very pleased to have Sharon MacLean with us. Welcome, Sharon.
Hello, Ruth. Thank you very much for the invite. Glad to be here.
That's great. So, Sharon, tell us what you are passionate about and why.
Such a good question, Ruth. You know, the beauty about life is that we are given limitless choices, I have found, over which to have passions and to be curious. So I have got several major passions that I'd like to tell you about, but and they all have to do with, I think, communications for me in my lifetime. And I've had an appetite for understanding how we communicate one-on-one, one-to-many, and I believe that really strong families start with good, healthy communications. I believe that as we grow and build communities, we need good communications, of course, and when we're building nations, we need good communications. So this has been something that I have worked on in my entire working career. But you know what, Ruth? Of course, the opposite is true of that. Bad communications wreck so many things. So communications in my working and my professional life has been something that I'm very, very passionate about. Otherwise, I'm keen on health and wellness, and my own suffered a lot at various times in my lifetime. And so I lost attention. There were moments in my life that I wasn't paying attention properly and gave up a lot of my health to other priorities. So now I'm really focused and passionate about not only the body, Ruth, but also the brain. And I'm kind of particularly concerned today about the brain and the impact of dementia. So that's a big deal and a passion for me. The other thing is arts are in my Ukrainian DNA. So dancing, singing, music. I've sung in a show choir for 10 years now to raise funds for mental health. But my roots stem from a region in Ukraine that is really focused on the arts. So I come by it naturally and rationally and really. So that, and then of course my faith. I have a big passion for my faith. Passions, lots of them.
I understand. I call myself a multi-passionate person.
Very good. I like that.
Yes, and I can relate to several of your passions. My dad struggled with dementia for 7 years before he passed on. So it is really important to take care of ourselves.
It's a hard road to go on. And I'm hearing I lost my mother 2.5 years ago now, almost 3. And it's so many more people are coming up and it's as if they're discovering the road for themselves anew each and every time. But there is a pandemic. Talking about pandemics, there's one going on right now for in that area of dementia.
Definitely.
So got to stay healthy.
Yes, we need to stay healthy. So share a bit of your story about the difficult events that you've experienced and how they've affected you.
Ruth, the thing about difficult events, I think, in life is either we may not recognize them as difficult at the time that we're going through them, or it's a crash site and we think we'll never get through them in that moment.
Right.
So I've had, this question is such it's an awesome one and a challenging one for those of us who don't really like to speak about, the difficulties in life. But when you pose these questions for me to think about, I went back over them this time just for you, Ruth.
Thank you.
And thought about, I came up with 5 of them, of course. And the first was when my late husband and I started up an independent magazine without the necessary resources. That was one difficult time in life to build up. And so many people, today, Ruth, I see so many, we've all been forced out. So many people have been forced out into becoming independent solopreneurs. They've been downsized. They've been released. They've gone on their own. They're not going to work for the man or the woman anymore. So now they are starting out on their own. And it's kudos to everybody for taking a breath and doing it. So I'm going to say starting the magazine was a difficult time. The second one was when my husband died 4 years later from cancer, and a trusted employee emptied the bank account at the almost within days of each other. So my husband buried him with a funeral. At the same time, I had landed up in surgery with a benign tumor on my back within 2 days. And then the next, no, I guess I got home a week later, and we'd heard that he'd taken the funds out of the bank. So that was a particularly difficult time in my life. Third, my sister died while climbing Mount Everest. That was a tough time.
Mm-hmm.
Then I lost the first of my 2 hips. I've lost both of my hips and recovered from them. So that came along a few years later. And then, of course, when the markets crashed in 2009, 2010, and we closed the magazine at that time. So there have been episodes, you know, we all have our share. We don't know what we're going to have as a difficult time. Those are mine.
Yes, we all have those difficult times, but we also have choices, don't we?
We do have choices, yes.
So
there will be people who have said, I've made some bad choices in life, Ruth.
Haven't we all? So share with us one particular choice that you knew you had to make during a struggle.
Well, probably the one choice that I had to make, the delicate moment to actually close the magazine and a walk away. And so there's so many times, and I'm just going to talk really about business. This is what this conversation here is about, but that choice will come along in many different fashions, I think. So the choice was to actually close the magazine. And I always think of that song from The Clash called Should I Stay or Should I Go? And so should I stay or should I go? So that song really was a big element and a big time in my life. Do I fight for it further? Do I go out and bring in more investors? Do I close it for a pause and make a move back into it? But I closed it, and it was the right choice at that time.
So you've referenced this a little bit, but how have your struggles made you a stronger person?
Well, the struggles for me, because I did not have a husband, and I don't have children. This gave me a lot of time to be able to have self-reflection, and to read a lot. And so I did devote a lot of that time to study and to think. And that gave me a lot of time to rethink about my own faith. I am a Catholic, and I have decided that Catholicism is my faith. Not to say that I didn't read or learn about other religions and other faiths during that time. And that really gave me a pause to think about my choices in life going forward and which directions I would be taking. And that was a big point in my life to do that. Then the doors opened, and they opened up for me in a really thorough way to work in social media marketing. Which I had become as an early adopter in 2008 for the magazine, because it was just a no-brainer, you know, what we're going to go into social media as well.
Right.
For me, it was a no-brainer. For a lot of people, it was very early days. So I did make that choice and make that turn, and I took the investment of time that I had available to me to read and to study and to learn what I knew about social media and social marketing, which other communications people did not, by the way. Other marketers didn't have that time to make that deep dive into the reading and the research. So that would have been certainly a pivotal time for me. Yeah.
So you said that social media was one of the doors or opportunities that opened for you because of the struggle that you went through.
Mm-hmm.
What suggestions or advice do you have for people? How can people go through difficult times and flourish rather than drown? And the second part of the question will be around social media. I'll let you answer the first question first.
All right. Well, of course, these are all for me personally, Ruth. They're not lessons for anybody else, but there have been so many lessons I have acquired through these difficult times and through my life. But I've learned that I don't need to carry the world on my shoulder anymore by myself, which is where I lost my hips, I believe, to this day. And that do my best to live in the moment. So looking back and regretting and or rethinking episodes, and you know how you live in your head sometimes, and you're saying, I should have said this, I could have said that. Why didn't I make that move? And why didn't I present this in a different way? But going back and spending a lot of time in regret, I don't think is healthy. That's what I learned.
Yes.
By the same token, worrying the future to death is not a great idea either.
No.
And I know there will be a lot of business leaders who will say, you know, that's not great advice, Sharon, to not worry about the future. How do you make plans for the future? No, I'm not asking anybody to stop and avoid making a plan or thinking about the future. But for me anyway, I know that what I could do is I don't have to rush anymore. Right. And then I can turn over my problems to a higher power. And guess what? We're going to work together to figure out what needs to be done in the moment. With an eye to the future, of course.
No, that's great advice. Live in the moment, because we do tend to miss out on a lot when we either live in the past or live in the future. We miss out on the present. We're devoting our time to so much to rethinking and rehashing and looking, where that time that is wasted looking back or even looking forward takes away from the energy that we could be producing today. Definitely. Any tips around social media that because you have a lot of experience with your magazine and communications? So in social media, what I hear a lot about today, and I'm listening to a lot of Twitter spaces. Of course, I get to yours from time to time, and Keith and others, as well as on Clubhouse. And of course, you know, the conversations about video being our best friend today, which I don't always agree with. But what I'm hearing people is really talking about the technology and how to use the technology. And you and I have had this conversation many times in Twitter spaces. And I've heard it again this morning in a Clubhouse conversation where they talked relentlessly about the video technology that we use. And I want to say to people, and then we know that those solopreneurs that are coming out into business life for themselves, whether they're using Twitter Spaces or Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Clubhouse, the social audio platforms, or Instagram, of course, and all of those platforms, they're rushing in and they're trying to figure out the technology. And what I want to say to them, whoa, step back, let's peel it back a little bit and find out who you are and what is that you need to say to the world. Choose your words and figure out, look in the mirror and find out who you are before you can start talking and teaching to everybody else. And let's take an understanding about what your vision statement is that should be consistent across the platforms, and what your mission statement is in order to achieve your vision, and then which strategic objectives are you going to use in each platform to reach your goal post. So that is something that I think I've seen, and I want to impart as a message to people working in social media. And then the other part of that is once we have figured out what it is and shaped our message, not only shaped our message, but understand who our audience is. And I have to tell you, this is just as an aside, Ruth, you know that I come from Virtual Communication Mastery, and we've assembled a team of people who have got different disciplines that they bring to the table. But we had to rethink who our audience was 18 months into the journey, rethink it again and understand it again, and then had to go out and test some ideas and some messages and some thoughts
and go back to find out and really kind of get more clear on who it is that could be hearing our message, should be hearing our message, not even should or could, but want to hear our message.
Yes, and I find more than ever, people are a little more forgiving when you learn on the job, so to speak. And yet, I agree with you. One of the messages I give to authors is be clear on
Yes.
who you are, what you have to offer, know your audience, know the market, and sometimes you do have to experiment to find the market that works for you. But if you're clear on who you are and what you're offering, that helps a lot.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I love how you're teaching people to write books again today, and that it is such a rewarding experience to have to write something and then communicate it in a book and then repurpose that book into so many other mediums as well. But the foundation, so I want people to have that foundation in place. You know, there's a fine line before testing your wares in front of audiences and losing that audience for good and coming out professionally and looking like you know what you're doing. So I'm going to say that there is a way, there's a place for the beginning. I probably steer more towards being ready to deliver a message, both technically, professionally, and have my messaging and our messaging down for ourselves and for our clients. But you could certainly, I think, package or at least address a testing time to say, folks, this is simply a testing channel. If you want to come with me on my journey, you're more than welcome, but understand that's what this is. And we've got that luxury on these platforms.
Yes, we do. Thanks for all that you've shared with us. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Oh, I just love how people are communicating today and using all these technologies and discovering their audiences and loving the opportunity to reach out to people around the world. That is so invigorating for me to have met you, Ruth, online in our own province here in Canada, but we have conversations with others in Australia, in Europe, and throughout the United States, of course.
Mm-hmm.
India, that has been really, really rewarding. And I love that whole journey.
Me too. So Sharon, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
My preferred channels are LinkedIn and Twitter. So on LinkedIn, you could reach me on Sharon A.M. MacLean, Sharon MacLean, and it's Virtual Communication Mastery is the company. And on Twitter Spaces, also Shared MacLean, Shared MacLean, SHARED MacLean, MacLean, or Sharon MacLean. And I like that. They can email me. I love email. Sharon at Worldgate Media now. That's a different email address. And those are the ways.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us today and for sharing your journey or small pieces of your journey. I'm sure we could talk for days, but
we could. I know we could, Ruth.
Thanks again for being here, and I look forward to continuing the journey together with you.
Ruth, thank you for inviting me. It's been awesome.
You're very welcome.